This is why you'll always be average." My sister said it coldly as she tipped the glass. I didn't have time to move. I just stood there, frozen, as the water splashed across my open chemistry notebook, ruining the last 3 months of handwritten work I'd been preparing for a major grant submission. The pages soaked instantly. The ink bled and blurred like my sanity was being dissolved one formula at a time. My laptop barely escaped. My prototype, thank God, was on the shelf. Delilah smiled like she'd just done the world a favor. She didn't even try to pretend it was an accident. "Maybe that's a sign," she shrugged. "You've been wasting your life chasing something that's never gonna happen. Some of us have jobs. Some of us have dreams. You have this." Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stared down at the soaked notebook, heart hammering, throat tightening. Behind me, I heard our mom's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. Her wine glass clinked softly. She glanced down at the damage, then at me, then back to her phone. "Maybe it is a sign," she said flatly. "Maybe it's time to be realistic, Rory. You've been holed up in that room for months and haven't made a dime." That was it. No outrage. No concern. Just indifference. Just quiet approval of the fact that my sister, who still lives rent-free at 24 and whose biggest achievement this year was opening a nail blog, had destroyed my only shot at something big. They didn't understand. They never had. And they had no idea what I was about to do next. My name is Rory Quinn. I'm 20. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm the daughter of a retail manager and a woman who treats Chardonnay like it's a personality trait. I didn't get lucky. I didn't get scholarships. I didn't even get encouragement. I got a garage and grit. And despite being treated like the background noise in my own home, I had been secretly building a working model for a clean energy conversion cell, something portable, efficient, and designed for low-income communities and disaster zones. I hadn't told them about the $50,000 grant competition I was applying for through the Innovators Accelerator program. Because I knew what they'd say. Because they only noticed effort when it came with applause. Because no matter how far I reached, they always acted like I was just pretending to be more than what I was born into. But that moment, watching my notes dissolve under a pool of cheap lemon water, it flipped a switch inside me. And for the first time in years, I didn't just want to prove them wrong. I wanted to leave them stunned. That night, while Delilah FaceTimed her influencer friends about killing it on TikTok and Mom blared reality shows in the living room, I sat in my cold garage, knees pressed to my chest, staring at my waterlogged notebook under a heat lamp. I didn't cry. Instead, I started rewriting every equation from memory. Every adjustment. Every failure. Every recalibration. My hands shook from cold and caffeine, but I didn't stop. I worked through midnight. Then 2 a.m. Then 5. By the time the sun cracked across the edge of the window, I had 6 pages rewritten. By 7 a.m., my prototype blinked with a full charge. And by noon that day, I had resubmitted my project, now with updated schematics and a video demonstration that I filmed right there in the garage. I sent the application to the IAP. I didn't even tell them. Not because I was afraid, but because they didn't deserve to know. The next few days, I stayed quiet, focused. I avoided meals, moved my prototype to a locker at my old community college. I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore to buy new supplies. Delilah bragged to her friends about getting a brand collab with a vegan hairbrush brand. Mom got another Botox appointment. And no one noticed I was building something bigger than all of them combined. Until the envelope came. Until that Monday morning when I found a black and gold envelope in the mailbox, thicker than usual, stamped with an IEP seal. They weren't emailing finalists this year. They were personally mailing only the top 3 candidates. I stood frozen on the porch. My breath fogged in the morning air. I read it again. Top 3 finalist. Live presentation round in Los Angeles. Fully funded. All expenses covered. Press coverage included. I had done it. And still, I didn't run inside screaming. I just smiled. slipped the envelope into my jacket, and walked past them like nothing had changed. Because the truth? Everything had. The airport terminal buzzed with travelers and overhead calls, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat. The envelope rested inside my backpack, zipped up next to the only business outfit I owned, borrowed slacks from my friend Neha, and a navy blouse I bought secondhand 2 years ago for a job interview I never got. I had exactly $42 in my bank account. I didn't belong in a competition where the other 2 finalists were Ivy League students with personal labs and private funding. At least, that's what Delilah told me before I left. "You really think you belong there?" she laughed, tossing her manicured hand through her hair. "They're just going to use your sob story. You're the scrappy girl from nowhere. You think that's sustainable?" Mom didn't say anything, just sipped her coffee and reminded me to not embarrass the family. I didn't argue. I just boarded the plane and made sure my prototype was protected like it was my heart beating in a box. Los Angeles was dizzying. They put us up in a boutique hotel downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, quiet hallways, a city that never blinked. I didn't sleep that first night, not because I was nervous, but because I was hungry. Literally. I couldn't afford room service, and I wasn't about to waste the little cash I had. So I drank water, sat in silence, went over my pitch again and again. The next morning, I met the other 2 finalists in the prep lounge. Caitlin Rowan, MIT. She walked in with a rolling case and a media assistant. She wore silk like it was armor and didn't look at me twice. Tarek Bennett, Columbia. Charming, loud, already shaking hands with the press team. His suit looked custom-fitted. His confidence was heavy, like he expected to win. Then there was me, in borrowed slacks and worn boots, clutching a storage case with wires poking out the side. I smiled anyway. They didn't. The prep room had 3 stations. Cameras. Live mics. Rehearsal crews. Caitlin was up first. Her presentation? Clean, rehearsed, clinical. A drone-based AI system for disaster relief supply delivery. Tarek's? Flashy. A water purification wearable band using nanofiltration. Marketable. Sleek. Then it was me. The room was colder when I stood. I connected my prototype to the screen, plugged in the solar panel, spoke clearly. And for a minute, just a minute, the silence wasn't judgmental. It was curious. Engaged. I didn't dazzle them with polish. I didn't have buzzwords. What I had was proof that something I built in a freezing garage from scraps and dollar store wiring worked. Generated clean, drinkable water. Stored it. Filtered it. Could be scaled up or carried in a backpack. It was simple. It was powerful. It was real. And when I finished, I caught a glance from the event coordinator, Mr. Langford, a former engineer with tired eyes and a Harvard pin on his lapel. He didn't smile, but he gave me a single nod, and that meant more than any applause. That night, the finalists were invited to a rooftop mixer. I wasn't going to go. I had no energy, no clothes, no appetite for fake smiles. But something in me said I needed to be there, that they needed to see me standing tall, even if I was the poorest one in the room. So I went. Jeans. Same blouse. Tied my hair back. And that's when Caitlin cornered me by the bar. "You're good," she said. "Too good." I didn't expect that. I blinked. She took a slow sip of champagne. "I've worked too hard to be upstaged by someone who built their prototype next to a washing machine." I stared at her. "What exactly are you trying to say?" She leaned in. Her voice dropped. "They vet finalists. But not every judge is neutral. Some of them like drama. Some of them like sabotage." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. She tapped my prototype case. "Be careful, Rory. You never know what could break in transit." Then she smiled and walked off. The next morning, the final demo round was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 6:45, I got to the staging room early, bag in hand, prototype carefully wrapped like it was a heart transplant, and that's when I froze. The lid of my case was slightly open. My stomach dropped. I had locked it. I double-checked it every time. My fingers were trembling before I even touched it, but the moment I opened it, I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. The coil was gone. The entire main copper coil, the one piece that conducted the charge between solar conversion and water output, gone. No note. No sign of damage. Just removed. Quietly. Cleanly. And I knew. I didn't have proof. But I didn't need it. Caitlin smirked the night before, her "be careful" threat. It was all there. Obvious. Strategic. She didn't just want to win. She wanted me erased. I told the staff. They sympathized. But I had no camera, no witnesses. All they could offer was duct tape and an apology. "We can delay your presentation 15 minutes, the tech guy offered. "But if the device doesn't work?" "I'm sorry." I nodded slowly. "Thanks." 15 minutes. That's all I had. 15 minutes to either give up or fight like hell. I raced outside. The parking lot was baking in the California sun, shadows short and cruel. I sprinted toward the event center's maintenance shed. Prayed. Dug through a dumpster. My palms were black with grease, my knees scraped raw. And then, like fate didn't hate me completely, I saw it. An old, rusted desk fan. I yanked the copper coil from its motor like my life depended on it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even remotely clean. But it was copper. And I ran. At 10:14 a.m., I took the stage. Sweaty. Bruised. Slightly out of breath. But I didn't blink. Because that room full of CEOs, engineers, founders, press, they weren't getting the polished version of Rory Quinn. They were getting the real one. The one who built things from trash. The one who rewired broken systems with $4 tools and dollar store tape. The one who didn't wait for permission. I connected the jerry-rigged coil. Flicked the switch. The green light came on. It worked. The panel stared, mouths parted slightly. I demonstrated how the unit filters dirty water, using a beaker I borrowed from the refreshment table. I explained the conductivity levels, the breakdown of parts, the rebuild under duress. I wasn't just pitching a product. I was telling a survival story. And when I finished, they clapped. They stood up and clapped. And Caitlin? She turned white. After the presentation, Mr. Langford, the tired-eyed judge with the Harvard pin, approached me quietly. He slipped me a folded piece of paper and whispered, "We have security footage. We'll be reviewing it privately." I opened it when he walked away. Inside were 4 words, scribbled in block pen. "You were crazy. We saw." By the time I got back to my hotel room, my phone had blown up. Not with texts from home. No, they still hadn't said a word. But with notifications. #RoryQuinn was trending on STEM Twitter. A reporter had snapped a photo of my jerry-rigged prototype and called me the scrap queen of innovation. And then the biggest shock of all, an email from a venture capital fund. Subject line: "We're interested in funding your concept." They were offering $200,000 in seed money. I just stared at the screen. 20 years old, living in a house where no one believed in me. And now? Now, they were offering 6 figures to bring my invention to life. Back home, Delilah finally texted. Just 3 words. "Are you serious?" Mom followed with, "Why didn't you tell us you were on the news?" I didn't reply. I just closed the messages. Because they were about to see exactly how serious I was. When I walked into the house, everything felt different. Not because the air had changed, but because I had. Mom was on the couch, robe loosely tied, TV muted but still flickering. Delilah leaned against the kitchen counter in an athletic set she probably hadn't sweat in. They both looked up like I'd walked in uninvited. And neither said, "Welcome back." Instead, Mom folded her arms. "So you're famous now?" Delilah laughed under her breath. "She's not famous. She's just viral. That'll be over by next week." I set my bag down. Calm. Controlled. I was offered a startup deal. "Startup," Mom repeated, like the word tasted like vinegar. "Rory, you can't build a life off of internet sympathy. You're just doing this for attention. You know that, right?" Attention? I stood there, filthy from travel, emotionally drained, still wearing the same 3-day-old boots, And they had the audacity to think this was about attention? My voice came out low, but sharp. I built a working device that can save lives in disaster zones. I got offers from 2 engineering firms and 1 VC. And you're worried I'm doing this for attention? Delilah rolled her eyes. You've always acted like you're better than us. No, I said, stepping closer. I acted like I deserved more than being ignored in my own house. The silence was heavy. Mom blinked. Well, I hope you know if you mess this up, we can't help you. There it was. Not pride. A threat. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked to my room, closed the door, and cried harder than I had the entire trip, because it wasn't the disbelief. It wasn't even the cruelty. It was knowing that even now, even after everything, they would rather watch me fail than admit they were wrong. The next few days were a whirlwind. News interviews, articles, a scheduled podcast appearance, emails from professors, invitations to innovation panels, even a DM from a famous science YouTuber asking to feature the prototype. And still, not once did my mother say, "I'm proud of you." Not once did Delilah say, "Congrats." But they had no problem inviting their friends over. Mom hosted a brunch just to unwind, where she somehow told the story like she had been there, guiding me the whole time. Delilah posted a photo of me from the news with a caption, "My sister doing big things #proud." I almost laughed. They didn't love me. They loved the attention I now brought them. But just when I thought things couldn't twist tighter, they did. I got an email from my AP. Subject: Urgent. Allegation of intellectual theft filed. My blood ran cold. Inside the message was a notice. Caitlin Rowan had filed a formal complaint. She claimed my prototype was based on her original design, which she conveniently published on a private blog 3 years ago. Her legal team wanted an injunction against my prototype until the matter could be resolved. My $200,000 investment? Frozen. My interviews? On hold. The podcast pulled my episode. Everything halted. I sat there at 2 a.m., staring at the glowing laptop screen, with the house silent around me. Just the hum of the fridge. My fingers numb. Heart racing. They were trying to erase me. And worse? They might win. Because I wasn't rich. I didn't have lawyers. I didn't even have someone to call. And for a moment, I sat in that darkness, thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe they were right all along. Maybe I was just average. Maybe I should walk away before I break harder than ever. But then I remembered. I remembered what it felt like to dig through garbage for copper wire. I remembered what it felt like to be laughed at for wanting more. I remembered Delilah soaking my notebook and Mom smiling as she said, "Maybe it's a sign to give up." And suddenly, the darkness inside me twisted into something sharper. Not fear. Fuel. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours documenting everything: timestamps, photos, source code, even the coffee-stained original sketches I'd stashed in a shoebox under my bed. At sunrise, I sent a desperate email to Dr. Langford from the judging panel. 3 hours later, I got a reply. "Meet me on Zoom at 10. I know a lawyer." By noon, I was on a video call with Marla Jenkins, a pro bono attorney who specialized in intellectual property theft, especially when it targeted young female creators. She looked at the complaint, skimmed Caitlin's supposed blog post, and narrowed her eyes. "This isn't even close. She's bluffing." "But she froze my deal," I said, voice shaking. Marla nodded. "Not for long." 2 days later, Caitlin's move backfired. Marla went public with the sabotage footage. She posted the security video showing Caitlin sneaking into the prep room and tampering with my case. It went viral. Fast. #SabotageQueen trended within hours. The startup investor called me the next morning. "We're ready when you are, Rory." And then the podcast re-invited me, this time for a full episode. Back home, Delilah stood in the kitchen watching the news play my clip. "She's everywhere," she muttered. Mom said nothing, just sipped her wine. They didn't say a word to me. But when I packed my bag the next morning, I left a note. "You told me I'd always be average. But average girls don't get startup funding. Average girls don't survive sabotage. And average girls don't leave home like this." with everything they built and nothing they regret. 1 week later, I walked into my first board meeting. I wore the same boots from LA. My voice didn't shake. And when the head investor asked what made my invention different from the rest, I smiled, because I built it alone. And now I know exactly what I'm capable of.